have roll taken, please?
Attendance roll call for Transportation Committee. Danielle, are you on?
Yes, we are live.
Okay, thank you. Senator Anderson?
Here.
Senator Furphy?
Here.
Senator McEwen?
Excused?
Senator Pappas?
Here.
Chairman Landon?
Here. Okay, well, thank you. Well, our first bill for consideration tonight is House Bill number HB 0020, Driver's License Requirements Visual Acuity. And do we have anyone from the department online to present this bill?
Mr. Chairman, we do. I have let in Director Reiner as well as Misty Dobson from the Department of Transportation.
Thank you very much. Director Reiner, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. A pleasure to be here tonight. Luke Reiner, Director of YDOT. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll set the stage and then I'll kick it over to Ms. Dobson to finish up with some of the technical details. But the history of this bill is that it came out of the interim of our Joint Transportation and Military Affairs Committee, but it was not one of the suggested original interim topics. What it was a result of the initial request to agencies to say, hey, what would you change about statute based on your experiences in COVID? And so this was the one suggestion that we had to streamline and make our agency more efficient in terms of our COVID response. Just a little bit of history is certainly as COVID hit us, we did close down our driver services for several weeks. But as we started to bring them back up and as we started to work through the rule set, the one rule that was in statute that really provided us with some hurdles in terms of effectively getting back to work was the requirement in statute that you must have a vision test. And it really was very difficult to deal with. And so what this bill does is it does not change the requirement, but it changes where the requirement resides, and it moves it from statute to rules and regulations. And you might say, hey, why do we want to move this requirement from statute to rules and regulation? And the fact is that it makes it easier for us to adjust in an emergency. There's other rules that because there's other basically statutory requirements that because they were in rules, we are able to adjust under the governor's emergency power, but not this one. And so our recommendation to the interim committee was that we move where this resides. And that's really what you see in the bill. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Ms. Dobson to add some details, and I'm certainly happy to walk through the bill if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Director. First of all, we have a question by our chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director Reiner, I just wanted to, just from a technical standpoint, really struggling to hear your microphone. And I was going to have you just double check on your end to make sure you've got it turned up for us. But thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go ahead and defer to Mr. Rossetti at this time, and he can kind of walk you through the changes, and then I'll go ahead and answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome, Mr. Rossetti. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for YDOT. The director did a good job, I think, kind of laying the groundwork for why we are here. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly walk you through the bill so you guys understand where the changes are. And again, what we're doing is we're putting the requirements and the idea and how a vision test and what the requirements for passing the vision test are from statute into rules and regs. As part of that process, we would work with like the Optometric Association and other people through the rulemaking process to ensure that everyone's concerns are addressed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll walk through the bill. The first change that you'll see there is on page 1 on line 15, and that carries over into page 2. And what we strike is a vision test and change that to has demonstrated adequate visual acuity according to department rules. The next change is really just a grammatical issue. That's there on line 2. It changes which to that. Similar change there on line 6. As we move on then through to the next change, you see that there on page 2, lines 16 through 18, we have similar language again, and shall require each applicant to demonstrate adequate visual acuity according to the department rules. So again, we're just trying to be very consistent as we move through this going forward so that everything would be in the rules. And again, the benefit of that, as Luke mentioned, was you can change that in an emergency to react to a situation. It also is a little bit more flexible if there's some advancements in technology or a new way to do this sort of testing in the future. It's just easier to do it there than to make a statutory change. The next change that continues on there on page 2 on line 18 is we add the division so that it's clear that it's the driver services group that will add that to the rules. And then there's some more grammatical changes. We exclude the eyesight, but we keep the ability to read and understand official traffic devices. We add then grammatical correction here to just say, and the applicants, it's neutral and it's universal that an applicant's an applicant regardless of gender there. We then have some additional changes here again, just for the flow, and we worked with the LSO office as we drafted this. The change there then at the bottom of page 2 on lines 22 and 23 basically just read that the examination may also include an actual demonstration of the ability to exercise ordinary and reasonable control of the vehicle. That again is just to clarify and add better reading of the statute due to these new changes. Continuing on then to page 3, we have in section 31.7.119 section B, we add the similar language, demonstrate adequate visual acuity according to department rules. On line 15, we again add the applicants and strike his. Starting on the bottom of page 3 on line 22, Mr. Chairman, this is the amendment that occurred over on the House side. And what this did was this was an area that when we did the original discussion of the bill, we missed that this was also an area that needed to be added if we were to do this, just to ensure that there was consistency throughout the statutes. So in section G, the change actually occurs there then on page 4. And again, this was a little bit more prescriptive in statute, but we will again just go to the change for that the applicant has demonstrated adequate visual acuity according to department rules. Moving then on to page 5, sir, we just really get to the effective date. And that's really the bill in a nutshell for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Any questions of Mr. Rossetti? Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And Mr. Rossetti, I'm just curious about, you alluded to the rule process, which would no doubt involve optometrists, I believe you said. I'm just curious about, is that piece something new, or is that something that you always have tried to do on those visual exams? And I assume that, can you tell us a little bit about the exam itself? Is it going to be modified then? And we're going to get asked out on the floor, I'm sure. Is it going to be adequate, and rigorous enough to make sure that you can know that I can see well enough?
Mr. Chairman, through the Vice Chairman, I guess. I think the intent of going to the rules and regulations, and I would absolutely let the Optometric Association speak for their position on the bill. I don't want to speak for them, but generally through the rulemaking process, Mr. Chairman, there is a robust public comment period. In this instance, we have already had some prior consultation with the Optometric Association, so they kind of understood where we were going and what we were trying to accomplish. Regarding the standards as we anticipate them right now, I believe that the visual acuity, if you go see your eye professional, is going to be similar to what you've always done, right? They're going to look at the eye chart. They're going to rate to make sure that you still meet the 20/40 standards that have always been in place, as well as an assessment of your peripheral vision. That would still be the intent of what we would do sitting in our exam station as well. The reason for wanting to go to rules and regulations is, as the director mentioned, through COVID, there were states that were experimenting with apps on a phone, modified eye tests where they were done in a parking lot to allow for social distancing that really hadn't been calibrated to the same extent. There are also states that are starting to explore the ability to have a kiosk at a grocery store where you could go sit and actually do this test in their machine. So we'd have to be able to say that that test, as long as it's calibrated accordingly, would meet our standards. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, Mr. Chairman, but our intent isn't to lessen this requirement. It's just to put it into a place where if something needs to change due to an emergency or some sort of technology, it would be more readily available to do that, rather than having to go and wait for a statutory change to occur.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Senator Anderson, one moment.
Sure.
One thing I'd just like to do, and I forgot, I just wanted to acknowledge Representative Henderson and Representative Fortner. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to mention you out there. So thank you. Senator Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. As I understood it from the interim, this change would allow the applicant to come in with a certification from his doctor that said he could see all right, and you wouldn't have to do another test. And I'm assuming that we will still do tests, but we can rely on the optometrists to do them also. Is that correct? Is that where we're headed with this? Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chairman and Senator Anderson, that is allowed, and we would anticipate continuing to allow that in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Oh, Senator McEwen.
I just want to revisit, Mr. Chairman. I just want to revisit something that was just said. We're going to probably continue to allow the optometrist test. And the reason I ask is, I spent 27 years in the Army and carried a Wyoming driver's license the entire time I was gone. And the only way I could get it was with an optometrist form, and it was through the mail. And I'm assuming that isn't going to change with this language, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Rossetti?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Senator McEwen, correct. Absolutely. Eye care professionals would still be a method in order to get this accomplished. That would not change.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions? Okay, not seeing any. Anyone, Director or Ms. Dobson, anything you would like to add before I go to the folks in the Senate committee room here?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I have nothing further to add.
Okay. Okay, I see Ms. Klein out there. Would you like to come forward?
Got to push the button harder. Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Carrie Klein, and I am the Executive Director for the Wyoming Optometric Association. We are supportive of this bill and the changes that would allow the Department of Transportation to define visual acuity requirements in rules and regs, provided that the requirement for vision test with a minimal threshold as currently defined still remains in those rules and regs. We feel it is imperative that the requirement for visual acuity and visual field tests remain a requirement for new or renewal of driver's license. And we will continue to work with the Department of Transportation through the rulemaking process to ensure that the current requirements that are already there and have been carefully and thoughtfully determined through previous collaboration would continue to remain during the new promulgation. So thank you. I would stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions of Ms. Klein? Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And Carrie, are you confident? And I hope your microphone is green, by the way.
It is.
Anyway, these things make it a little tough. Are you confident that that with your involvement that we can develop a test we can be comfortable with? And I appreciated the senator from Campbell County. We definitely want the ability to be able to take something in to get our driver's license. But I'm just curious about on-site. I don't really want something that's going to extend the time that it takes, for somebody to get through the driver's license process. So can we, if I choose to do it on-site, can we put something together that can assure us that somebody can see well enough and yet not take, 30 minutes? Does that make sense? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair. Yes, we're confident that we can work with them. At this time, it's my understanding in visiting with the doctors that have worked with me on this bill, and that we're in the meetings with the Department of Transportation prior to the bill, was that, technology could advance. At this time, there is nothing, that we're intending or that they're intending to put into place that would change what's already happening. So the process as defined right now would remain the same. It really is a matter of taking the language that says visual test required to visual acuity as defined by rules. And so we don't anticipate any dramatic shift coming in rules and regs to change the process as it is already currently defined. So you would be able to still use the little machine at the driver's license that you look for the balloon, or bring in the form from your optometrist for either mail-in or actually arriving there in person.
Thank you. Senator Furphy.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. How do you define adequate visual acuity? That doesn't have to mean 20/20 vision. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Fine.
Senator Furphy. Well, that's probably a better question for an actual eye doctor than it is for myself. But it would be my understanding that it would be defined that you could see either with correction or without a correction to at least 20/40. That's what I think is existing already. I wear contacts. Without my contacts, I probably would not pass that visual acuity test. So with my contacts or glasses, I do have that visual acuity. So that's my understanding, is that the definition of acuity is not changing. It would be the accepted 20/40.
Thank you. And I just would add that by taking it out of here, the language of the actual acuity, and putting it to the rules, the requirement for rules, certainly I'm assuming your organization will help the department in the rules making process come to an agreement on what those changes need to be made. But what's nice about this change is that it makes it more flexible, doesn't codify those changes, so that, if something needed to be changed down the line on visual acuity for some reason, you could do it through the rulemaking process a lot easier than you could through the legislative process. So any further questions for Ms. Klein? Thank you. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else out in the audience? I don't see anyone. Danielle, is there anyone online? I know there's some other folks that have registered for tonight, but I don't know if they want to speak on this issue.
Mr. Chairman, I do not see anyone with their blue hand raised.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, then we'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, I have a motion by Senator Anderson and a second by Senator Landon. Shall we, do we need to go through the bill page by page?
Question on the bill.
Question on the bill as it is. Okay, let's hearing that you're ready to vote. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Roll call on House Bill 20 engrossed. Senator Anderson, Senator Furphy, Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
Aye.
Okay, well, thank you. Now we'll turn our attention to the next bill.
Who's gonna handle that bill?
Well, I'll leave that up to our chairman. That's his job.
Well, let's,
Let him do it.
boy, let's get this lined out. I'm thinking that Senator from Campbell County, because he's had to send that form in before, you know, he knows, he knows what it takes, you know?
Okay.
We'd be right behind him if a fight breaks out, don't you think, Mr. Vice Chairman?
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're right there.
I live right next door to him. I can protect him.
There we go. All right. Yeah. All right.
This one doesn't seem real tough.
Okay, let's move on.
Boy, Senator.
All right, House Bill 0135, Hank Co-Leadership Highway Designation. And that's a bill by Representative Henderson, and he's here to present it tonight. Representative Henderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
We can't, we can hear you, but we
Okay.
don't know how well, as long as you got a green light, I think we're good.
I've got a green light.
Okay,
Just checking. I have the privilege of bringing to you House Bill 135, Hank Co-Leadership Highway Designation, and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill is fairly straightforward. We have State Highway 120, which originates in Thermopolis and goes up through city of Cody and then on up to the Montana-Wyoming state line. During the committee hearing in the House and the amendments, you can see there in the engrossed version, the length of this was defined from the milepost. I think it's 85 something to 100.5. And so basically what it is about a mile either side of the community of Cody, where Senator Coe was from. And in terms of the questions that I received when I was developing the bill, information from the department is that there's never been anyone else associated with this highway and that kind of thing. So we're not interfering with the current record, if you will, in terms of labeling or designation of the highway. There is a section that was added, section 3, or excuse me, section 3, where they talked about an appropriation which enabled donations, and you can see that there. And then the effective date is July of this year. When I originally presented the bill, there was no appropriation in it, and I would share with you that this is not going to be a question of paying for it. I've had some really good input from the county commissioners involved in terms of both the one in Thermopolis and the one in the Park County. In fact, last week, one of the Park County commissioners gave me some updated information that this will not be a question of finance in terms of ability to pay for the signage. Originally, there was 4 signs, and with the new designation or definition of the length of that highway, it's probably going to be 2 signs. And so, and the department indicated, as you can see in the fiscal note, the amount for 4 signs for the whole thing. So that's pretty much the question there is, do we want to designate the highway? And I would urge a favorable vote. And then how's it going to be paid for? It's taken care of. I'm not aware if there's anyone else on the line as far as, on the Zoom side of this, but I know there's some people from the department who could maybe answer questions, more technical questions. That's the bill.
Well, thank you. I do have one question. When I kind of looked at the map and from highway or from milepost 80.5 to 100.5, it seemed to me it wasn't through Cody. It seemed to me it started just north of Cody, where Highway 120 comes into Cody and goes to Chief Joseph Highway, which is the highway that goes to the park, right? 269, I believe it is. But maybe the department can clear that up. But that 20 miles, certainly it's not 20 miles
Right.
through Cody. So I think it may be more than just through Cody.
May I
So
respond?
anyhow, maybe the department will clear that up when we get to them.
May I offer a quick response?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Just to provide some background on what the discussion was in the committee was that we wanted to take and reduce it from the entire length from Thermopolis to the state line to a mile south of Cody and a mile north of Cody. That's what's on record. So in terms of the mile markers, that's news to me, Senator, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, well, I'm sure someone would be able to tell us. So,
Yeah.
Committee, any questions? Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I actually have a question along with you and maybe just get some clarification from the department. I thought, Representative, that we had made a designation up there of the highway between Cody and Powell. Now, limiting this to just a mile outside the city limits of Cody, I think that was spot on, but I wonder, and maybe the good senator to my right here remembers, I thought it was a veterans designation of that highway, but we can check with the department on that.
I asked, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I don't believe it was Highway 120. It was
No, I think that's
Highway
sir.
16, Highway 20.
Highway
um,
20.
That was the designated earlier on for
No,
I can't remember.
It was a veterans highway.
The
Yeah.
veterans, the highway we did was Highway 20
20.
across the entire state. But there was another designation
Right.
Right. I've been
for a
Park County.
portion of that highway. I'm sure the department can straighten us out.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chairman, thank you. Just additional information, in working with the department, and 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago now, 2018, and frankly, the bill was drafted in honor of Senator Cole and using his format when we designated the Wild Horse Highway, which is Highway 14, which may be the one you're talking about, which goes east and west
East and
generally
west, yeah.
around Cody.
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
that's correct.
And then the one to the west of Cody going over to Yellowstone is the Buffalo Bill Highway.
Yeah. So, and I don't believe there's any designation right now on Highway 120.
Right.
Well, thank you for that, both of you, and appreciate that, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thanks, Representative.
Any other questions, Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. If it's just a mile on one side of Cody and a mile on the other, that's not 20 miles. So we do need to fix this.
Yes, sir.
We'll hear from the department.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I'm confused here on the top of page 2, we have Henry, Huddleston, Rogers, Hank Coe. Why do we have that in the bill? Hank never went even by Henry, let alone the Huddleston and Rogers part of his name. You're not going to use that on the billboards and things, are you?
Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. To you, Senator, I didn't have no intention of using that. It's the Hank Coe Leadership Highway. And
Yeah.
And-
what would happen if we took that out of there? Because I know Hank was a little sensitive to even Henry. One of his good friends called him Henry, but nobody else did.
and
But he never talked about Huddleston and Rogers.
Representative.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Senator, I agree with you. I mean, the whole point of this is to show respect and commemorate Hank's leadership and public service. And so I in no way want to do anything that would be considered as interfering with that. So,
Senator Anderson, I know that's his legal name and he never changed it. I think we need to use his legal name in the law, in the statute. It won't go on the billboards, but
Maybe so. Maybe so.
I think it
If
ought.
we have to
I
use
think
it.
his legal name ought to be memorialized in the statute.
Okay, as long as we understand, we're not using that on the billboards.
no, sir. No, sir.
One other question, the appropriation from the general fund. Do you think if we eliminated that appropriation, it would hurt your bill? Would it hurt your effort?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Senator, I think that would be an excellent amendment to this bill is to get rid of that because this isn't about money. It won't hurt the bill. You can look at the list of sponsors and I had more that wanted to sign on, but I don't think that hurt the bill at all. Thank you for the question. And it also would help the bill actually in terms of use of our time, in terms of, going, as you know, through the appropriations and so on. So.
One question I have.
Yes, sir.
In your section 2, where it allows the donation, the department can accept donations. It says from any political subdivision specifically given to the department. Is it not allowed to get donations from private citizens?
Mr. Vice Chair, that wasn't in the original bill. That was added as a part of the process in the House, and I would have no problem with that taken out. You can see the original bill on the site there, and I would defer to your leadership and experience.
Okay, and maybe there's a legal reason why the department can't take a donation from a private citizen. I don't know. Maybe we'll ask the department.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions for the bringer of the bill?
Mr. Vice Chairman. So
Senator Anderson.
if we took that 2,800 out, we'd take out section 3 completely, I think, wouldn't we? Because that's all it's about is that appropriation.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yes, sir, Senator. I mean, the department, you can see what the fiscal note is. It's original fiscal note. They were indicated to be covered under administrative costs. We reduced the size of it, so we won't need as many signs. And we already have indications from the commission that they're willing to make sure that whatever needs to get done gets done. So I think it's certainly okay to take it out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We have one person in the room. Would you like, Mr. Winnie, would you please come forward and share your thoughts with us?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. It was about 10 years ago, I started observing the education committees closely, going to interim committee meetings and things like that. And as I observed the committees, I came to realize that Senator Coe was a visionary in a lot of ways. And he also had a deft hand in getting legislation through and recognizing what would work, what would get through the process, and then shepherding through the process. And I came to have great respect for what he did. And there was some consternation at the other end of the hall on, gee, how many roads can we name for how many senators and representatives and whatever. And I responded to that by saying, I view this as something like a sports team retiring a jersey. In other words, rarely done. But I believe Senator Coe, this is appropriate for Senator Coe from what I observed. And quite frankly, I salute the gentleman. Sad that he passed away as he did. But I support the bill and commend it to your consideration.
Thank you. Chairman, any questions? Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Winnie for being here tonight, staying late, and for your kind words. I know he would appreciate it. And as you know, I know how many hours you spent with those education committees, and so thanks. They'll appreciate it.
My pleasure, Mr. Chairman, and subject to your questions. Thank you very
Any
much.
further questions? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Winnie. Let's go online now. Actually, I should apologize to the department. They should probably have testified before anybody else, but if Danielle, if you could let in all our great department folks. Director Reiner, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Relative to this bill, certainly a man that we all respected and admired, and this is very appropriate. I'll let our chief engineer speak to the miles. Before we get there, though, would certainly say that, proud to make the signs and work on the dedication. To the discussion of funding. So that was a discussion in the other house, and you saw the amendment that was made, and that really goes to this long-standing a tradition of the body to not take funds from the department for putting up signs as we dedicate highways. And that's where that came from. And as you look back at the multiple dedications we've done in the last years, there's always been a funding source. And in fact, there's one that's being worked on now in Douglas for an individual who died in the line of duty jumping off the bridge. And the local community is providing the funding for those signs. So that's the history there on the funding issue. With that, Mr. Chairman, let me pass it to Mr. Gillette, our chief engineer, and then perhaps YDOT could stand for questions.
Okay, one question I have of you, though, Director. It was testimony from Representative Henderson indicated that there was originally four locations for the signage, and that it was changed to 2. Does the current number that's in there indicate the 4 signs, or is that funding that's there for 2? And if it's for 4, would it be appropriate to reduce it by half?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will, my guess, unless Mr. Gillette knows for sure, just knowing what the 2 signs in Douglas we're estimating was right at $2,500. And so this is right there, the same amount. So my guess would be that it's an appropriate amount. If it's not, it won't get spent. And like the bringer of the bill, I suspect that there will be no general funds expended here because the communities will foot the bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gillette.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman and committee. My name's Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. And concerning the highway, as far as I know, it's Wyoming 120, the north-south highway. And I just checked the mileposts on my map, and the mileposts, I believe, are good. What I would recommend, though, is right at the beginning of the bill there, and I apologize, I have the original one, but on about line 11 or 12, it says State Highway 120, and between and right after between, I'd put approximate mile marker 80.5 to mile marker 100.5. That way it gives us a little latitude to put a sign in there that is not like right in front of another sign, so that we can get them spaced approximately right according to our standards. But the mileposts are close enough. They're about a mile either side. There is an equation in between, and that's why it appears to be 20 miles, but really it's only 2-3 miles. I can explain what an equation means, but just rest assured that I do believe that they are very close to the correct milepost markers. As far as the sign cost goes, I would agree with Director Reiner. 2 signs of this nature would cost in the $2,500 to $2,800 range. So I do believe that appropriation is good. And I would certainly stand for any further questions.
Yeah, Mr. Gillette, I guess when I looked, I saw that milepost right around 100 was at the juncture of 269. Was I looking at a bad map? Because that's way north of or was it wait, it seemed like it was at that's Chief Joseph Highway. I could be wrong.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chairman, I have our milepost map here with me, and it looks to be correct to me. I can certainly check that tomorrow if you would like, but yeah, the Chief Joseph Highway looks like it takes off at about milepost 115.
Okay, and I must have wrong data. You know, if you could maybe share us, email us a clip of that map, it would be great. I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I will do that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gillette from the committee? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, when he sends us that quip, could he tell us how mile marker 80 to mile marker 100 is just 2 or 3 miles? Could he share how that works? When our math says it's 20 miles and his says it's 2 or 3, could he tell us how that works? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can explain that now if you would like.
Well, if it doesn't take too long, I'd like all to hear.
Yeah, what's the deal?
Go ahead, Mr. Gillette. Please explain it to us.
Mr. Vice Chair and committee, at times our mile markers, when we move highways or redesignate, the mile markers don't always align up from one end to the other. So we have what's called an equation, and it could be, as an example, mile marker 100 going forward equals mile marker 80 going back, which means it's the same spot on the highway, but you go from mile marker up to 100, and then at that point it changes to 80 and then goes on up. And we need to have those when we shorten or lengthen highways so that mailboxes, city limits and those things are still correct.
Okay, well, that makes sense to me. You make some changes in a highway, you wouldn't want to change the entire highway. Yeah, you wouldn't want to renumber it. So thank you for that explanation. Committee, any further questions? Okay, is there anyone else, Danielle, online that may want to join us?
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 people online. We have Ms. Delancey, Mr. Chris Brown, Lee Livingston, and Matthew Hall.
Okay, anyone raising their hands?
All 4.
Okay, please let them in at your pleasure. Okay, first up is Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chris Brown, representing the Wyoming Lodging and Restaurant Association and the Wyoming Travel Industry Coalition, and we're speaking in strong support of this bill. Mr. Chairman, when my predecessor, Lynn Berleffi, introduced me to Chairman Coe 10 years ago, I was told then that he was one of our greatest champions. And over the past 9 sessions, I came to learn that firsthand. Chairman Coe always supported efforts that helped Wyoming's second largest industry thrive. And he fiercely defended against policy considerations that could have detracted from hospitality and tourism in Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, he was beloved by many in our industry all across the state. And so much so that before his passing, the Wyoming Lodging and Restaurant Association awarded him with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his tireless commitment to supporting our industry. Mr. Chairman and committee, I'm proud to support this bill this evening. We feel that this is a fitting tribute to a man that spent many years of his life not just championing our industry, but serving our great state. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Committee, any questions? Thank you. Danielle, could you let in the next person, please? Ms. Delancey, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Cindy Delancey, and I'm the president of the Wyoming Business Alliance. And I too stand in strong support of this effort. As many of you know, Chairman Coe was a member of the Wyoming Business Alliance Steering Committee for decades. He knew Wyoming business in and out. He was such a champion for so many wonderful things, business related in Wyoming. I'm so moved by Representative Henderson's efforts to honor our friend in this way, and we truly would ask. I like the suggestion about removing the appropriation. I'm sure there'll be no hesitation in finding the funds to stand up the signage. And Chairman Coe was always one in support of efficiency, so that might be a really good suggestion to keep this Senate file moving, or I'm sorry, this House bill moving. But this sure feels like a simple step to honor one of Wyoming's greatest statesmen. So myself, the members of the Business Alliance, ask that you take this step to help honor our friend and great statesman of Wyoming. So thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Thank you very much for testifying. Danielle, next.
Getting there. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lee Livingston, Park County Chairman of Park County Commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Okay, thank you. I was having technical difficulties. It happens with cowboys and computers. When the good Representative Henderson reached out to me about this bill, I was very much in support of it. He asked me to contact the family. I did. They're very, very enthusiastic about it. They're, supportive. The Park County Commissioners, we met yesterday. We didn't take any action because the bill had not yet been completed, but we will, to a person, are going to make sure that there is funding available to do this. Hank was a great part of Wyoming, a great part of Cody, a dear personal friend of mine. Spent many time in the mountains with him, and he helped me in getting my political career started. I would offer maybe one little friendly amendment for any of you that, like myself, that had the fortune or misfortune of riding with Hank. You might want to see about removing the speed limit signs on that highway, because he never paid attention to them anyway. And with that, Senator Vice Chair, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Maybe we can swap out the speed limit signs we'll make the highway number sign the speed limit sign. It'll be appropriate for Hank.
Mr. Vice.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I think we could get a unanimous vote on that amendment. So yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that brings us to Mr. Hall. Mayor Hall, good to see you.
Senator, good to be seen. Thank you. For the record, I'm Matt Hall, Mayor of City of Cody, and it's a pleasure to be able to testify today on this bill. I was glad that Commissioner Livingston dropped that little line in there. I too spent a few trips around Wyoming with Senator Coe, going to racquetball tournaments with a good friend of mine, my good friend H.R. Coe, his son. And so it's very appropriate that you bring this before for us, and I know that we won't have any trouble raising any kind of appropriation to take care of the signs for this memorial to our good senator. I think I was about 7 years old when he got elected to the state legislature, and so for all my life, pretty much, he's been State Senator Coe, and of course, before that, county commissioner and volunteer fire department, and I know not everyone agreed with him, but by God, everyone respected him, and I know that all the people in this community are very much behind this bill, and I got to tell you, we still very much miss Hank, as I'm sure all of you do. I had the good fortune of growing up with that family, and what they've done for our community, and Hank in particular, is hard to measure. So with that, I'd urge pushing this forward and unanimous support. And thank you for allowing me to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Any questions, committee? Thank you for your testimony. Danielle, anybody else out there?
Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes our testimony online.
Okay. And I see Representative Fortner. Anything? You're good. Okay. All right. Committee, I think that ends our public testimony. Can I have a motion on the bill?
Bill.
Moved by Senator Anderson and seconded by Senator McEwen. Committee, I know we got a few changes, so let's look at page 1. I believe there was a suggested amendment on line 12. Anyone would like to move that?
Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Vice Chairman, I appreciated the suggestion, but the more I look at that sentence, we don't prohibit in any way the Department of Transportation putting that marker where they need to. All this says is state highway between 80.5 and 100.5 shall be known as that designated highway, commemorating. And so I don't think we need the word approximately in the state law.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think we're good on page 1, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, and I probably have to tend to agree. I know when we did Highway 20, we moved those things left all over the place, even for that section that wasn't designated.
I think.
Yeah, I think they're good. They can put the sign wherever they want. It's actually that hunk of road that we're designating, and the signs could go before it, after it, whatever. Yeah, okay, I agree. Okay, anything else on page 1? On page 2, Senator Anderson, did you want to make a motion?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I do. I want to strike line 12 to line 23, section 3 entirely, and renumber section 4 on page 3. I know that Hank Coe had a lot of connections in Cody, and all of them are willing to do something with this, whatever the dollar amount is. I think we could be overrun with donations if we didn't watch it.
Okay.
So, excuse me.
Anderson, could I have a second from someone?
Sure.
Second. Okay. Moved by Anderson, seconded by Senator Landon. Now, we can discuss it.
So I think there'll be plenty of money, just like the mayor and the county commissioner said. We don't need to worry about that part of it. And I don't think we ought to trouble the general fund for $2,800 for this. I think a lot of senators would donate to the cause also. So I don't think Representative Henderson has any trouble with the funds. So I'd like to see us eliminate that.
To that point, let's go back to page 2 and talk about section 2. And maybe if I could have the department come back online, they could tell me whether they actually can take donations from private citizens. Is the director out there anymore? Ah, there he is. Director Reiner, in section 2 on page 2, line 9, it says, or in line 8, donations from political subdivisions is only according to the statute. Do we want to?
Mr. Vice Chair, we are certainly able to accept donations from basically any source. So it could certainly be individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Director. Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chair, with your permission, if I could add one comment on that section in terms of discussion of the political will of the body, because we'll certainly follow that. I believe the intent was no department funds may be spent on signs, and we can accept donations from wherever, political subdivisions or corporations or individuals.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the director before we make a change here?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Anderson.
Would it be all right if we just said the Department of Transportation may accept any donations or contributions and eliminate from political subdivisions entirely?
Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Anderson, that would be fine with us. I think we accept donations, for example, right now on wildlife crossings, and it doesn't stipulate who they may come from.
How about this committee? How about if we on line 7 and 8, we say no department funds shall be expended, but the department may accept any donations. Strike contributions from any political subdivision, and then go on with specifically given to the department to assist. Yeah, so it would read, no department funds shall be expended, but may accept any donation specifically given to the department to assist in the installation of signage required under this section.
You need a second, the department. No funds shall be
Department,
expended, but
no
the
department funds.
may accept.
Oh, yes, you're correct.
Okay. And I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor, don't we? Do we have
we
two
do.
motions now?
Yeah, we do have a motion on the
Yeah.
floor.
Oh, we do.
In Section 3, so we can
Yeah,
work
yeah, yeah.
section 2 a little. bit.
Addressing
I
section-
apologize, committee. Let's dispense with the motion on the floor, and that's to delete lines 12 through 23 on page 2.
And renumber. And renumber.
And renumber section 4 to
Four.
section 3.
Yeah, yeah.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that amendment passes. Now we'll go to the section 2 amendment. And
I second that amendment.
and here's the way I read it. No funds shall be expended. No department funds shall be expended, but the department may accept any donation specifically given to the department to assist in the installation of signage required under this section. That's how the sentence would read.
Second.
So I think that was your motion, right?
It was.
I just, as a chair, I assume not.
Oh,
Yeah, that was Senator Landon's motion.
oh, okay.
Any discussion,
Senator Anderson seconding that.
any discussion on that? Judy, did you get that okay? Okay, okay. All right. All those in favor of the amendment, motion to amend section or lines 9 through, I guess it'd be through 10. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Committee, any other amendments that you? Hearing none. Let's have a roll call.
Roll call on House Bill 135 engrossed. Do pass amended. Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Furphy,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Chairman Landon,
Aye.
all ayes.
Okay, well, thank you. That bill passes and will be sent on to the Senate. And I see that one of the co-sponsors is Senator Landon. So guess who should be able to do that?
Well, Representative Henderson, thank you for carrying this bill and getting it this far. And I know these guys will back me up out there on the floor. I would say to the committee, I've heard some rumblings upstairs that there's some move afoot to expand the support of this bill. So you may be hearing from the leadership of our chamber in that regard, if you have not signed on to this, and we'll see what the leadership has in mind. But the bottom line is, I think it's got the support of the entire state Senate, obviously, and appreciate it, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your passion on this. Okay, committee, anything else before we adjourn? Mr. Chairman, you got anything?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I just would real quickly, I'm very hesitant to work on a Friday afternoon. But that might mean a couple of evenings next week where we've got to really bear down and get through 3 or 4 bills in a sitting. So if you guys are okay with that, we'll stay away from Friday. I think for this coming Monday, my intention is to maybe get to 3 or 4 military bills. I think we've got some military bills coming and we'll do those all in a chunk. And then Wednesday we'll go on to something else, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Well, from my perspective, I'd soon put longer nights on Wednesdays and on Mondays and Wednesdays and not cut into Friday night.
Okay. Thanks, committee. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you.